Mitch. We'll get better as time goes on. But welcome to Coffee Buddies as part of the pop-up for On Nucleus. So I don't know whether all of you have been at On Nucleus or any of you have been at On Nucleus, but it's a great delight to be inserted into the middle of all these great talks to have Coffee Buddies. And Coffee Buddies is a community, a life science community, which we're building with the intent to do things creatively and do things a little bit differently so that we're all having a bit more fun and enjoying ourselves as well as making money and getting a Ferrari. And to kick off for today, we thought we'd do something interesting and have a debate. And I'm delighted to have two teams, which I hope I've got at least skeleton of the two teams here. And hopefully more will join us. But I've got two teams, and the debate today is around what we would call creative excitement, and on the other side, creative experience. And the example I give is somebody who comes into a lab and they say, I've got a really great idea, Tony. I'd like to do a project using macrophages and ubiquitin. And they say to me, I would love to do this. And they're full of ebullient excitement. They really want to do it. They've got, they're doing it. And then I come in and they say, well, what do you think, Tony? And I go, my goodness, I'm a bit like a plumber. I go, my goodness, that's a big job. You need an assay, you need this, you need that. And their face starts to drop. They go, basically they think, what is this guy doing to me? And I think one of the hypotheses is that ideas can be killed with pragmatic experience. So my debating team were full of juice earlier when I gave them the warm up, but hopefully they'll come back full of juice. But I'm going to start bringing them on, and hopefully we can get a bit of fire between the two sides. And whilst we're doing, I'm asking the people who are in the debating teams to put their hand up if they have a different opinion, and we'll keep our eyes out. And then the last part of the program, we will be asking others to come in, whether they've got anything controversial. But the more juice we get into this, the more provocative, the more fun it'll be. And that's part of being creative, is to have fun. So I'm going to kick off. Now, if I can find James. Now, is James Patterson anyway? James. Now, just kick off with us, James. You're a young entrepreneur, full of ideas. Tell us where that energy comes from, and where the creative juice, and if you don't mind me saying, where the naivety of the idea is generated and how that projects out.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So I think my ideas maybe come from working across lots of different things and seeing lots of different ideas and trying to put them together. So just to bring it back towards maybe what we're doing on the debate here, but I think if you've got a lot of experience in a particular industry, it maybe stops you from being able to see something innovative and new in another industry. Whereas if you're more happy to sort of jump between different things and sort of have a sort of maybe surface level understanding that can recognize something interesting, it's easier for you to get stuck in to something new.
So just trying to warm us up here. So you said the word stop. So do you think experience can actually inhibit you?
It's been my experience with people who have experience sometimes, in that they'd say what I'm doing isn't worth doing because they're looking at it from their sort of the deep well of their experience, and it's stopping them kind of having a view out into what's going on outside.
So let me just start winding in. Jason, you're an entrepreneur full of energy. Maybe you can go off mute. Jason, what's your view of, you got your idea, are people stopping you? Or is there some energy going on?
Oh, it's a good question. I like when they're naysayers because you can learn from them, and it makes me personally more motivated to prove them wrong. So I actually think that it's a good driver for young entrepreneurs to have somebody say, no, you can't do it. I go, well, watch me. And then I go back and I prove it to them. And even if it turns out that some of what they said was sage advice, you can learn from the mistakes of the past. And we think we are too concerned with getting things right 100% of the time. Maybe it's not the right time, or the technology's not available. There are loads of reasons why something didn't work previously. That means it could work now if you learn from the past. They're new enablers. And just on the whole general concept of enablers, I think that experience is great, but there's going to be experience that's used to block and experience that's used to enable. And you should always go for the experienced individuals who are there to help enable you to achieve what you'd like to achieve with the wealth of experience they bring to the table, as opposed to the ones who constantly say, it's not even worth getting started, it's been done before, it'll never work. Those are the ones that are motivating in a different way.
Yeah. Bringing Hannah on. Hannah, on the creative excitement area. Hannah.
Yeah, so I would say for me it's more about having lots of ideas, and so when we started off, we had a lot of initial ideas, and we had quite a few people sort of like, oh, you know, putting in roadblocks. But I would actually say, so I sometimes use some of that experience to use that to maybe pivot or go into maybe slightly different directions, but the overall aim and your absolute goal is still the same. So I think sometimes it's about using that experience that's coming in, but still not letting that drive you off track from your initial sort of goals and your ideas.
Okay, so I've got, who have I got? Rachel. So, I mean, have you experienced, and do you know anything about, or do you sense this? Because I mean, Jason used a great word, I think, naysayers, which I love that, Jason. And but you know, the objective of this debate is to be controversial. So, I mean, if you had naysayers in front of you, have said, "Oh, you know, that's hard."
Yeah, so I think I'm lucky, right? I work for Causley. We're creating a disruptive technology. So I think a lot of people that they hire are all innovative. They're looking to change the way that people find evidence. They're looking to change habits. So at this company, I would say you have a lot of people on board for new and innovative ideas and excitement. They're looking to change the way that people do things. I come from big pharma, right, where you are one of a very large pool of people. So I think there, it's not necessarily that you would have a lot of naysayers, but your voice is a lot less heard. Whereas here, you have to come up with innovative ideas to change the way that people are doing things currently.
Yeah. So can I start to bring the creative experience in now? So I'm delighted I got Tom in the corner. I was worried about you, Tom. And then I've got Keith, the legendary Keith, who seems to be in some dark dungeon. And then who else have I got? Lubor, who's floating around somewhere. Where are you, Lubor? Yes, Lubor. So who's going to put his hair up if he needs to ask a particular question. So I mean, Tom, you know, these, you know, we've got a load of people who've got ideas. Sometimes they don't like to mix with the guys who've got experience. They actually go off and do their own entrepreneur club and everything and talk a different language. Because I don't know why, but Tom, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think I disagree with that, actually, you know, because, you know, one of the things which I've always found, which has always excited me, is, you know, the young entrepreneurs. And basically, I think, you know, what we have here in the UK is a, you know, we've been looking at the sort of biotech wave, and there's been 4 waves since the 1990s. And I think this, you know, in the UK, we're just about sitting on the 3rd wave, possibly now really getting involved in the 4th wave. So we're behind, I think, with regard to the creative excitement that you would see, say, in the US, where they embrace novelty. One of the other things is that, you know, we don't have the money. You know, we're really just starting, you know, to finance these young entrepreneurs now. Whereas in the States, you know, in the 90s, you know, you had graduates coming out of Stanford, Columbia, with MD, PhD, MBAs. You know, they were all geared up, you know, for this sort of biotech revolution. And we're catching up. And essentially, we're just, you know, seed funding, you know, this life science revolution we're trying to create in this country.
But and I get it, man. But can I just ask Lubor? I mean, California dreaming. You know, tell us a bit about your view of experience versus excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in this industry for a very long time, since the mid-late 90s.
Prehistoric, I know you're prehistoric.
Say again?
You're prehistoric. We know you're prehistoric.
I don't look like it, but I am. No, I mean, I joined the industry before the first original genomic bubble. I don't know if that was the first wave. Tom, I don't know if you refer to that one, but you know,
1990. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw a lot of things blow up or grow really high and then burst. You know, like that was the first bubble, and I feel like we're entering another bubble right now. I mean, it's great that COVID-19 hasn't destroyed our industry. Actually, to the opposite, you know, fueled our industry. I think that's great news. But also crazy valuation going for crazy things. One thing I noticed by being in this industry for many, many years, that it seems to be that a lot of the knowledge has a half-time of 5 to 10 years, and people come up with things that they think are novel that, you know, when I look at it, we've done them 20 years ago. So I think what is good that we have different tools, like Jason was saying, that we have different tools and we can do things differently now. So that really enables us. But I think it's very important to learn from the historic lessons and to learn from other people who've been there, done that. And I think that is what we need to do in our industry. And I think sometimes ideas float too much in air without any attachment to reality or so. And pharmaceutical business is incredibly complex. Developing drugs is incredibly complex. If you think you can transcend over biology, I don't think that's a recipe for success.
But there's a new word that has been used a lot for flying in the air, which is moonshots. You know, the number of people who turn up to me and they say, well, I've got a moonshot. Now that means I'm flying in the air. I have no pragmatic view or straight lines to go there. So, but carrying on to moonshots, young Keith, who's looking disturbed over there, you know, what's this about, you know, the sage and the creative juice?
I think Tom said something interesting about the Americans being more open to the new, but I think we have a problem in that we're more inclined to fail to accept failure. You have to be in a situation where it's okay to get it wrong. And I think one of the bits of advice an old hack can give younger entrepreneurs is fail. If you fail fast and do something else. Don't hang on to something which isn't going to work. I was just pondering there about spider silk. I was reading the other day about someone's invented a way of making spider silk. Well, that, to quote Lou Boy, you know, that was something that happened 20 years ago. People made spider silk. What they didn't understand, and what we still don't understand, is how the heck the spider actually spins it out as a thread rather than making a big lump of spider silk. So moving on, actually trying to help say, well, the problem you have to deal with is this, and you're bright enough to solve the problem. Now go away and solve it. Is what the older people should be doing.
Yeah, but I mean, back to James, bringing the creative excitement back. I mean, there's this concept of limiting belief, isn't there? That you know what, those of us who come up with these great stories and these great metaphors, we tell a story that is maybe a blocking story. Now, James, when you hear the three experienced geek guys, does any of that resonate? You know, or do you think, well, I don't care whether there's three waves or anything. I just want to get on with my idea.
Yeah, I think it's very important, like I said, to understand the context of your idea. I mean, I talked to a company in Germany, and they claimed they had this unique target that, you know, they can treat COVID-19, and it sounded great. And absolutely, it was super exciting, to be honest. I mean, it was great to listen to him, and it was really fabulous, everything. And then when I went into PubMed and Googled, you know, I found publications from 10, 20 years ago that talked about this target, you know, so, you know, I think that's really important to put in, but he made it sound like we're the only one working on this target, we're the only one doing this, and this, and then I'll just say, is that really true? I mean, if it was 20 years ago, you know, I know why isn't, you know, what is the reason that no drug is on the market actually binding to that target? So I think that's really important. That's why it's, you know, I think in our industry, we have very good storyteller, and they get well financed, but sometimes we forget about the immense knowledge in our industry why things have not worked out.
So back to James. Is this helpful to you when you're sitting there building a company? You've got an idea, and is it helpful to hear all these stories, or what?
Well, the first thing I did when I had sort of the first idea I really worked hard on was to check that it hadn't been done before, because I didn't want to do something that it's the first bit of diligence you would do. If you found out that someone did try to do exactly the same thing 10, 15 years ago and it didn't work, I wouldn't bother doing it, and we'd just move, like someone else said, fail fast. That's the first bit of failure, is if someone's done it before and it didn't work, unless there's an obvious reason why it didn't work that you can improve upon and you think you have a solution for it, then sure, go ahead. But the first thing I do is look for.
But James, is anything really original? Can you really have a novel idea, or is it always a fusion of transversal activities? Where's the new idea?
Well, yeah, I guess the idea I worked on, it wasn't really a new idea. It was sort of sandwiching bits and pieces from different fields together into something new.
Yeah.
If you look at, let's say, CRISPR as being a really interesting invention, that wasn't a totally new idea, because in biology, we're taking things that already exist. There's science that exists, and we're trying to re-engineer it in a way.
Yeah. So let me bring Jason on. Jason, you use that wonderful word naysayer, and I'm trying to get a bit of fire into this. So, what's your thoughts? Is any of this, when you hear the other guys, might be the creative experience guys, does it inspire you? What does it make you think?
Well, it makes me think that there's a lot of opportunity out there that too many people dismiss because they have a certain worldview. So obviously everybody on this panel has the right mindset about finding solutions, about supporting the ecosystem, etc. But I think the vast majority of people out in the world don't think that way. They don't think outside of the box. And so that means for the entrepreneurs who actually do want to forge ahead and have ambition and want to shake things up, there's all the world to play for. We like taking a second look. Even if I look at some of the first companies in our accelerator, Start Codon, there are many of them that are in industries that when you originally describe it to a VC, they go, oh, antibody drug conjugates, that's been done before. Gene therapy, that's been done before. Full of problems. They don't stop to say, well, actually, these companies have figured out exactly the reasons why it didn't work for the past 20 years, and they've solved it. And sucks to be you that you didn't catch on to that and invest in them at the right time, but we have. So it's not just always a brand new novel idea. And many times it's taking a second look at issues that people have just dismissed as never being possible. And I remember from when I was in my research days when I was still in the lab, there were several problems that I would go to a PI and say, oh, I really want to investigate this. They go, yeah, it's been done. Doesn't make any sense. It's not true. Epigenetics is one of those key areas. It turns out Lamarck was actually onto something. People dismissed him as a hack. Turns out epigenetics is real. So there's always room to have a second look, and a lot of naysayers out there will miss the boat. So take that opportunity. Don't waste your time trying to convince them. Take the opportunity and then show them. And by then it'll be too late. They'll be trying to play catch up.
Yeah, so moving on to, I like it. Is there a slight American accent there, Jason?
It's a very strong American accent.
Yeah. So just let's catch on to that topic that I think Tom was bringing up, and Lou Boring, California Dreaming. I mean, what's this thing about the US? What is it that, is it they don't have the experience, or is it that, it's the brave new world and it's different? Is that what having that makes you different? I don't know. Tell us, Jason.
I think it does make a difference, but it's not everything. I will tell you this, and because I want to give room for everyone else to speak. I find that in the States, there is a lot of great frontmen. They're very charismatic. They can sell you on the hype, and they sell you on the vision, and that's enough for investors, and they'll just throw money at you. Whereas in the UK, people are a bit more risk averse, in Europe as a whole, but they have more substance. There's more to the science. It's really groundbreaking. And what tends to happen is you get the visionaries in the States who get all the money, and then when they reach a dead end, they acquire a UK company that has all the substance, and there you go. That's the combination. So if we want to change the world, it's going to be changing that dynamic.
Yeah. So let's move on. I want to hear from Hannah now. Hannah, just what's going on with that clapping?
Yeah, I was agreeing with Jason in terms of I think it comes down to risk, but also, and then funding. So when you have those early ideas, in the States, yes, there's people that can really explain that vision and get that out there. But I think and investors that are willing to put in when there's not really the amount of data and everything that's necessary maybe to go forward in funding. In here, it's not just a little bit, you need enormous amounts of data, and where do you get that information, and where do you get that funding in order to generate all of that? And I think that's where the issue is in certainly in Europe compared to the US. It's that initial Kickstarter, which is obviously where Jason saw the gap with Start Code On, and that's a real issue on how you jump that enormous sort of chasm from I've got an idea and now I've got something that's with all the evidence and everything that you need for the investors in the UK and Europe to invest in.
But to be an entrepreneur, you've got to almost you've just got to jump into the river, haven't you? You can't, and that's the thing, isn't it? That if somebody's telling you don't jump, you can't jump because it's not going to work. You never jump. So and it's so I'm getting it, Rachel. And I can feel Luborg wanting to come over there, but let me just, Rachel, what's your thoughts?
Oh well, I was just going to join in because I have a very deceptive American accent as well. So personally, like from working with American colleagues and working over here now in London, I've always been told that Americans walk into the room and very charismatic and make you believe that they have the best next thing. Whether they actually have the best next thing or not is a very different story. I think working here, it's much more pragmatic. It's a complete different experience. So I can only imagine with funding, it is a complete different experience as well.
So just tell us a bit more about that what do you mean by the completely different experience?
Well, I think Americans are, maybe the word isn't verbose, but they come in with a lot of excitement, maybe that creative excitement of making you believe that they have the best next thing. Jason kind of mentioned it. They're great front people or sales people in general, which I think has to do with the fact that a lot of biotechs in the US have a lot more funding. Whereas here, I find the conversations I have are a lot more knowledge-based, a little bit more black and white, a lot less frou-frou per se. So I think it's a different conversation that you end up having.
So hang on, I've got Hannah waving. Oh, no, I've got Keith waving. Let's just one more from the creative excitement, and then I'm going to bring the others in on the other side. But Hannah, just one last.
So I don't know if it's some of it's the CEOs and that are going out for the investment, but it's also the appetite of the investors. So I think that's a big thing. So you can't just do the frou-frou stuff and the really shiny dance here. You need to have all of the information behind. I mean, with us, with our recent funding, we've met the whole team. They want to go in, really in depth on everything. And I think that's the difference. But whether those are likely to, be more successful, that's the question there. So I think it's more on the investors' side.
Yeah. Okay. Let me move on to Lubor.
Yeah, I think I probably could talk about this topic for hours, but I think we have to be very careful how we mix maybe traits of people with the industry. So I agree with Rachel and Jason that Americans are very upbeat, very positive, very good salespeople, but we should mix that with our industry. I think let's stay with what's unique in our industry, and why is the industry in the US totally different than in the UK or in Europe at all. I mean, Tom was saying this, US is in its fourth wave. Biotech started in the US in the 60s, long time ago, so I mean, and investors have made money in America in biotech since the 70s. Genentech was started, Alza, if anybody remembers, was started there. So there's a long track record of getting in early and making tons and tons of money. And that's why it's not that Americans are, maybe they're less risk averse than UK or European people, but they also have a longer track record of success, of making money. If you look at the European list of European companies that have made money, it's very short. So European investor having made money. Also, I mean, an investor will only invest. First of all, he will ask you, what is your valuation? The second is, what is my exit? So the exit in Europe is incredibly difficult. Which public market you want to go to. Otherwise, there's a trade sale. In the US, the Nasdaq. So I mean, everything is so much simpler in the US, and it's so much easier for investors.
But folks, we don't live in the US now, so we've got 4 companies or 4 people on there. We got to, this is maybe what we got to. I need someone else to talk, because I think one of the issues is it a self-fulfilling prophecy that the experience is telling the entrepreneurs of the moment?
You company go up to Nasdaq now. You see that. You see people are going to now. People are building up the East Coast side. They're building a team on the East Coast in order to go public on Nasdaq, because the European market isn't, is holding up to it. And it's a solution. It's a solution. I think.
Tom's scratching his head, so that must be important.
Yeah, what Lubis says is correct, but what we've got here now are at least 2 Americans who come over to this country, basically to start up companies. Whether that's because, the market's saturated over there with people going around and round the same investment groups who've made millions and millions, and they're coming over here, because it's pragmatic, because the science is better, whatever. But, the reality is we are just really getting to grips with how good the UK life science and European life science is. So that's where we are, today. And to get back to what we were talking about, creative experience, we've been involved in AI for years, but I like to call it acquired intelligence. And it's that acquired intelligence which we're enabling a lot of these young startup companies to actually get off the ground.
So, but Keith, what's your thought?
I was just thinking that the waves of biotechnology is quite right. Go back to the late 60s, early 70s. So when you think about Amgen wasn't the first biotech company. There were companies like Cetus that were around before Amgen. What Amgen did was to discover something to work on it, and they ended up with EPO. But people forget that Amgen almost went out of business. They went about 3 days short of going out of business. It was only by forming an alliance with Kirin that they survived. And look at Amgen now.
Yeah.
So what happened then was the successful investors in Amgen moved forward to start the second wave of biotech. So then you got into the West Coast companies that are still around now.
Yeah.
If you actually dig in and find out who invested in those companies, there are 2 names that stick out. One was the CEO of Amgen, George Rathman, and the other one was Bill Gates. And those 2 led an investment syndicate that became enormous. They also had a guy called Zaffaroni. Zaffaroni was
not Lena. Nothing to do with Lena.
No, he was one of the guys who invented the birth control pill, but he started his own companies. Last time I looked, he'd started 35 companies.
He started Alza, the drug delivery company.
Yeah, one of them.
I need to bring in Jason because he's looking agitated.
Enax, Affymax, Affymetrix. So it's success breeds success. Success. And we haven't had those successes. We have to, as a group, lobby for significant government funding. The other thing people forget was the only reason that companies like Amgen and Cetus got started was because of US government money. Things like BARDA put huge amounts of money into American biotech.
But Jason, I'm going to ask Jason, are these conversations useful or are they limiting beliefs?
I think they are useful, but we have to be careful. We have to be vigilant that they don't limit our belief. And the reason I say that is I wouldn't be where I am today if I had listened to all the sage advice that I've been given over years. I am definitely benefiting from it, but the number of people who told me, why would you ever leave the States? It's the biggest market here for biotech. Why would you go to Cambridge? You're going to ruin your career. Nobody understands that in America. Why would you leave the lab? You're a PhD scientist. You don't want to be an entrepreneur. Why would you start a fund? You're like, so many different stages in my life, and I'm sure everybody in this audience, in the coffee chat, has had those, again, naysayers, who've told them very legitimate, statistically backed up reasons why they're absolutely bonkers for doing what they do. And I think that you have to take that into account and give eyes and teeth. That's one of the best advice I've ever had is eyes and teeth. You stare, you listen, you smile and say, thank you. I'll take that on board. And then you do what you feel is right. So if anybody has a take-home message from all of this, is eyes and teeth are the way forward. You have to listen, you synthesize, and then you just do whatever it is how you want in the first place. Because chances are, if you really feel that passionate about it, you will find a way to make it work. And then everybody will be on your coattails. The other thing is it's cultural. Just, I'm sorry, Tanya, just want to say it real quick. Culturally, I feel that if we change the perception of what success is and also make it more acceptable to fail, things will change here. Because the number of Solexas, where everybody talks about they sold to Illumina too soon, Solexa was in trouble before Illumina bought them. So it went from that $650 million acquisition to a $35 billion Illumina company. But time and time again, we do see large American corporates buying out smaller, innovative UK companies because there's a disconnect between the ambition as well as the capital to back young and enthusiastic founders here.
Yeah.
I'm off my soapbox now.
No, Jason, I love your soapbox, man. So let me just bring on Hannah again. Where's Hannah?
Hello.
Where's Hannah? Hi, Hannah. So, I mean, one of the things, Jason, is, I think, saying, there's a whole pile of people queuing outside to say it's not going to work. And so is there just something special about, is it something to do about naivety? Is it about, have we always had entrepreneurs like this? Or is something different going on now between, I don't know, an entrepreneur of 2020, is it different?
So I just want to come to the naysayers. So this is about experience and excitement. The naysayers don't fall in either of those categories. They fall in both of those categories from what I've seen. So they can be young, old, or, and so I've really experienced people that are really like, yes, go for it, and things like that. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then as far as I'm concerned, I think, when you're sort of starting out, we've got things set up in the UK that have been really beneficial. And for me, those are accelerators. And that's where we bring in experienced mentors in particular areas. And similar to Jason, I listen to some of those things. Some of them I'm like, yep, great. And others I'm like, yep, okay, next one. And I think it's about, I smile and that's great, thank you. But it's about taking the advice on. At the end of the day, only you know really what your vision is and where you want to go. And it's about making sure that you take the advice on that's appropriate for that stage of your journey. To make you sure you get to the next value inflection point and to keep taking steps forward. So I think that's the thing.
This idea of investors, I mean, are investors in that sage group that will look at you and say, my God, you don't know what you're doing. And, is there something as well about groupthink that, I don't know, a whole society there is a school of thought that not the older, but the experienced created clubs. There's clubs of, these, if you're not in this group, you'll get it. And if you're not in this group, you won't get it. I mean, is there anything about all of that?
Yeah, there is. And you can see, so, for example, Darren Disley with Mography, he's a serial entrepreneur going out to the next one saying, I'm going to do it again. You're like, yes, okay, it's not saying it's easy, but it's a lot easier to get investment. I think what some of the accelerators, which I'm very supportive of, are some of those young, straight out of university with a really great idea. They're not a serial entrepreneur. They've not got that background. And it's about supporting them to believe that they can do it. And the key for them which I'm part of that, is the motivation and what's driving you, and that's the key thing. So it's being determined to succeed.
Yeah, Rachel.
Let me unmute myself. No, I'm aligned completely. I think like going back to more of the creative excitement versus experience, what we've been talking about, I think it's super important that you're around people who encourage excitement and encourage you to bring new angles and ideas to the industry that you're working in. Right, we're an AI-based technology platform. I think someone mentioned it earlier. AI has been around for a long time. It's a hot keyword. So you're always looking for ways to differentiate yourself. And I think being new and innovative and making things different is incredibly important.
So we take AI, Tom. I mean, you know, I've been in many meetings where I'm bringing the experience, many meetings where people have said to me, you know, the thing about you is, Tony, you don't believe in the data. And I've thought, my goodness, well, I've seen all this before, and you know, I need to see a set of experiments with a pipette, you know. So, I mean, Tom, what's this about, you know, creative experience on things like that? Are we killing the innovative idea sometimes by, I don't know, saying, well, that's nonsense? Tom?
You know, as far as AI, you know, is concerned, and, you know, whether that's acquired or artificial, you know, there's 230 companies out there now who are all trying to, you know, create a market, you know, with regard to their company. And, you know, when you think of AI, I keep looking, you know, it's been around for a few years or more now. And I keep looking at, you know, what drugs have come out. And I think you can count them on, you know, one hand, if that. Okay, there's been tremendous investment in pharma, you know, whether it's AZ, Lilly, whoever. But, you know, what we're looking at basically is deep diving into the literature. And in the scientific literature, there's over 70% or more of papers that are, you know, can't be reproduced. So the data that we're mining, I think we have to be very, very careful of with regard to, you know, determining how AI is important. I think I saw one company recently who I picked up this drug for OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which essentially is a long-acting 5-HT1A agonist, which has been, the technology is as old as me, really. But
that old, my God.
Yeah, that old, you know, certainly, you know, the 1980s, you know, we were working on that, you know, particular receptor. And there's been numerous drugs that have been out there. So all AI for this particular, you know, company, you know, has done is produced a long-acting 5-HT1A partial agonist, which to me is no great shape.
I'm just going to shake it up a bit. I mean, Jason, I mean, do these stories help you?
They do. You know, I've got a counter story that kind of builds on what Tom's story is. PKC beta inhibitor. We've been looking and supporting a young company that has found a novel application of PKC beta inhibitor. But for any of you who are in the pharma industry, you'll know that there's a graveyard full of failed targets, like HDAC inhibitors never really panned out the way that we thought they would. PKC beta inhibitors, the same thing. Turns out in this case, if you use them to potentiate the stroma for chemotherapy, they work. If you use them to target the tumor directly, they don't. So most people examined them with the idea that they would be blockbuster drugs for treating tumors directly. Didn't work, but as a combination therapy, they do work. So we're now trying to support them to take a second look, but there's been so much bad blood from all the experienced individuals in the room. They say PKC beta inhibitors, been there, never touched this stuff. They're not willing to have a second look in the right context. So I think that the experience helps, but only so far as you don't say, well, maybe it's the right target, but the wrong application, the wrong indication, the wrong way of utilizing that target. So you've got to have both, like that entrepreneurial fire that says, well, I found a different way to make it work, and the experience that says, well, here's the reasons why I didn't. So they have to go hand in hand.
So I'm going to pass back to Lubor, because Lubor's hair, I think, is floating up and down or something. But I mean, you know, Lubor, this idea of I think what Jason said, you know, there's a room full of people who are going to say you shouldn't. Now, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because this is this thing about, does experience, pattern recognition kill excitement? So I've seen that pattern before, and therefore it's no good. Whereas somebody who hasn't seen the pattern doesn't care.
Well, that's very, I mean, that's very true. Like you said, I mean, if you have no experience, you have a, you know, blank mind, you know, probably open to anything. But I think what Jason said is really important. I think it's your attitude. And I think, you know, he invested into his company after doing his homework and looking, why did the other PKC company, what did they do wrong? And does this company have a new solution? I think that's the critical part. I mean, I think we face this in our industry quite often. I face it. A lot of clients come to me and they say, I do, you know, I do cancer vaccine. Ding, you're in the bucket. Nobody wants cancer vaccine right now. I mean, well, have you figured it out? Maybe. Are you the one that has cracked the nut? I mean, I work for Bristol Myers Squibb, and Bristol Myers Squibb is the company that opened the door to IO. You know, IO was a graveyard. You know, everybody hated IO. You know, there was so much money. Now IO, everybody loves IO. You know, because one company was able to look through and open the gate. You know, and maybe Jason will do this for PKC, but we don't know. I mean, but I think occasionally, you know, people find out why things have not worked and can look through it. And I think this is what we're here for. But most of the time, we must admit, you know, there's a dead end. When you think there's probably a dead end, there is a dead end or so.
Well, back to Hannah or Rachel, one of you talked about mindset, I think, and it's something about just mindset. Was it you, Hannah, or was it Rachel?
Yeah, I think that was me.
Yeah.
So in terms of dead ends, so, you know, maybe on certain targets, but I would say it's about, yes, knowing when to give up sometimes, but also is not to give up too early, because sometimes there might be a way through. And so it's about sometimes thinking about things differently and maybe approaching it from a different angle. But in terms of, for us, my mindset is, so it's like the motivation and the driving force behind it. I think that's the main thing that most entrepreneurs have, is what their really strong driving force. And so for us, we then you know, build up a very you know, highly skilled team. Not always everyone with years and years of experience, but then we build and we combine that with mentors, very experienced board, experienced investors. And so I think that's the thing. So I think it's about having excitement and experience. So that's, I'm going in there both.
So this question to you, Hannah, is this ecosystem a good ecosystem to, I don't know, to nurture entrepreneurism? And maybe I bring Rachel in to say, is this ecosystem? This is the ecosystem, isn't it? You know, especially now we're on digital. Is it a place to be, or are we missing something?
No, I think it's definitely the place to be. I think there's a lot to learn from people who have done it before you, but I think probably more now than ever, there's a lot of opportunities as well. So I moved over to Causley in January, and I think, right, as Jason was saying, there's a lot of naysayers of why would you move to commercialize a product that basically had nothing before, coming from a big pharma company. But I think that there's resources, there's the tech behind it, the opportunities are there, and you have a lot of open-minded individuals now, probably more than ever before.
Great. Graham, just mindful of time, my friend. How are we
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering if we could get a question in or two questions in from the audience.
Let's try and wind the questions in. So I've got Kat down the bottom who's waving frantically. Does Kat have, can you de-Kat? Oh, here we go. Kat.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, they're great session. Sorry, I had to dip out for a couple of minutes. I hope I didn't miss too much, but yeah, really fascinating. So, you know, I've got a real passion for being able to translate a concept into reality in particular from the technology sense, and that's pretty much, you know, where this conversation started at the beginning of the session, you know, about how to actually, you know, turn something into reality and to solve those technical challenges. And I think somebody said about, you know, you can see that a spider's making silk, but how does it do it, and how does it do it in the right way? And while we're talking about, you know, how the role of experience and where experience comes into it, we've only ever been talking about this industry. So there are actually, so how, and maybe in looking at overseas, to how what's different overseas, but what are other industries doing? You know, there are other industries that, you know, take sort of innovative concepts and ideas and have to translate them into things, systems, processes, machines, things that work. And how do they go from that concept to reality? And actually what we're really looking for is something, you know, a framework for curiosity, you know, a framework that's been sort of tried and tested by those who've been there, done that before, to say to those who are, you know, really excited and really creative, do you know what, this is fantastic. You know, if you want to turn it into a reality, here's the sort of the key steps to do it. A bit like, you know, if you have someone that's never done a jigsaw before and you say, right, you know, they really want to do it. So someone who's experienced can say, do you know what, the first thing you need to do, just find those corner pieces, and then, you know, find the edging pieces, build your framework, and then
I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, but I think what people would say,
but that exists.
Yeah, but people would say because life sciences takes 7 years, you've got a lot of holes. You know,
Yes.
That's where prototyping comes in. But does
Exactly.
anyone want to respond to Kat? Because I love that idea of, you know, the jigsaw analogy. I've got Pilar waving, and then I've got James waving. I've got lots waving, but let's start with Pilar.
Hi, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session. I'm slightly biased towards the digital health aspects rather than pharma, but what I would say is there is innovation in going to market, and that requires a bit of experience. And that's where you could marry a person or a team trying to look at solving the problem from a very original way, with experience of people who are actually very good at commercializing and taking those products to market. And tapping into the conversation of US versus Europe, I think US for the area is a fantastic commercial culture. They know how to take things to market, even though they might not have the substance that a lot of the research has here in Europe. And this is something to learn from, because for an innovation to be truly successful, you need to find innovative ways of taking them to market and finding out how the silk of the spider makes it there to market. Yeah, that's
Can I just ask you to say, because I'm feeling you've still got something to say. There's something that is particularly in you. Throw it out. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so other industries have ways to do this. So there is a set of guidance and guidelines for how you turn a concept into a prototype, and then how you get that prototype actually into something that works, and also how you do that's in line with, you know, your commercial model as well. So other industries like aerospace, software design, civil engineering, they use a process called systems engineering, which is actually ferociously complicated, but it's bare bones. Is a really neat set of guidance that actually enables you to take a concept into reality, and it's just as applicable to biotech as to anything else. And it's really, really, really helpful tool. It sort of says, you know, this is how you'd piece together the what and the how. And one of the key things is it's not trying to pre-plan everything. It's actually there to actually help you with innovation, respecting the fact that there are gaps and there are unknowns, and how you can actually manage something with a load of unknowns in the mix that still kind of steers you towards the outcome you're looking for. I put that out there. That's the real passion of mine, is building things well.
You know,
I think James had something to say as well. If you can just get James in.
James.
On Kat's point, I agree that I think if you build something and you have a sort of pipeline for doing it. So I think the first thing I worked on, the first sort of experienced person I spoke to was like, you have to file IP before you go and talk to anyone, otherwise you'll ruin your idea and it won't succeed. But then the next step is get data. So identifying, you know, professors or academics or CROs that can do the experiments that you need to be done. and then eventually just sort of building up the fact that this idea works. And now the next idea, it's exactly taking the same model, basically. But I think in the US, investors do this pretty often. If you look at Flagship, Flagship has a company creation pipeline built in, Versant, Third Rock. So they've all kind of got their own secret sauce company creation model. I mean, I'd like to see that more in the UK, honestly, as well.
Actually, I've been part, I mean, I'm a qualified systems engineer. I'm part of that community, and I've actually seen that in the US, there is a lot more participation from the biotech and pharma industry, a lot more overlap and exchange of ideas, because ultimately we're all just trying to create something that works, be it a business or be it a lab process or be it software, whatever it is, we're just trying to create something. And the Americans, it seems, are a little bit more, at this point in time, a little bit more willing to sort of take a look at other industries, not just what's gone before in yours, or you know, or what people are doing overseas, but actually say, well, what can we learn from other industries?
But I mean, back to Flagship. Flagship backs what we call a big idea. So they you know, the big idea is, I'm going to turn, I don't know, the microbiome into a drug. You have no idea what you're going to do. But what they do is they create this irrational exuberance around it, which is a book you all need to read if you haven't read it. And irrational exuberance actually, it brings in money, and it is the true entrepreneur who doesn't really care what's in front of them. They doesn't care at all. They're just gonna do it by some stealth. I don't know.
Tony, we're going to have to wrap up now. We've got people that need to move on. So sorry to be a party pooper.
Well, can I just thank you all? Can we thank everybody who participated and give them a round of applause? I hope you all enjoyed that. Everyone who enjoyed it, put your hand up. Oh yeah, good. So we'll do it again. Coffee Buddies continues. We've got an event tomorrow which is on cell and gene therapy, which should be really exciting, and look forward to seeing you again. And Graham, anything to say, last words?
Well, that's it. I think you've covered it. We've got the cell and gene therapy event tomorrow, which is really good, and we've got a really good speaker in Samir Khan on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. He's going to be looking at market access and you know, global market access. So that should be really interesting. So thanks a lot to everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
See you next time. Ciao then. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Everyone, bye.
Yeah.